Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my second childbirth experience story thing. If you haven't watched my first one, go watch it. If you have watched my first one, I did say that I got pregnant with my second daughter when I was 5 months postpartum from my first daughter. So they are 5 days shy of being exactly 14 months apart. A little backstory on that before I get to the actual like birth story. We literally got pregnant like the month we moved into our house. As I mentioned in the first childbirth story, that we were living at my mom's when I gave birth to Jet Marie, and then 5 months later, literally in December, we bought a house and moved out. So Jet was 5 months old, and that same month I got pregnant. I didn't realize I was pregnant. I was actually taking the mini pill, which is like the pill that you can take while you're breastfeeding, because I was exclusively breastfeeding my first daughter, Jet. So I was taking that. I was breastfeeding also, which they say is also a like method of birth control. So I ended up getting pregnant that same month in December, and I ended up having Charlotte in September. A quick run through of my pregnancy with Charlotte. It was definitely different from my first pregnancy. It was way harder. I feel like because I had a newborn, she was 5 months old, so at that point she wasn't necessarily newborn, but she was, a baby, and I was breastfeeding and I was pregnant. As far as that goes, when I went in and I had like my first doctor's visit, my doctor didn't technically say to stop breastfeeding, but he did just make a comment like, oh, you might want to start weaning and, introducing formula, this, that. And I didn't really like say okay or no to him. I just kind of said like, oh, okay, like, we'll see how I feel, whatever. They say that it can cause, preterm contractions because of the stimulation of your nipples. You can get like contractions, so that can be, a risk. I really felt strongly that I wanted to breastfeed her for the full year, so I just figured I would keep breastfeeding unless I felt like something was wrong, or unless like I felt like it was too much for me. And I ended up breastfeeding her with no issues, no complications, no preterm labor, nothing for the rest of the 7 months, because I did wean her right at, like her 1 year. Like I started weaning her at like 11 months, so by the time she was a year old, she was totally weaned. So that was another 7 months, because like I said, I got pregnant when Jet was 5 months old, so 7 months after that she turned a year old. So I had a 2-month like break of breastfeeding before Charlotte came into this world. So as far as my pregnancy goes, I had really early ligament pain, like groin and ligament pain. I remember I was like 14 weeks pregnant, like I wasn't even showing, and I was having trouble walking, and I was just in a lot of pain. And keep in mind, I was home with Jet. I didn't work. I was a stay-at-home mom, or I'm a stay-at-home mom still, but I've always been a stay-at-home mom with them. So I was at home with Jet and pregnant, so that was the first big thing. Also, I was nauseous pretty much my entire first trimester. I actually threw up a handful of times. Like I said in the first video of when I was pregnant with Jet Marie, I probably got nauseous a handful of times, and that was it. Never threw up. But then with Charlotte, I was nauseous all the time in my first trimester, and I actually threw up like a handful of times. So very different when it came to that. That's why in the beginning I kind of felt like, oh, I might have a boy, because my pregnancy started off differently. So that wasn't the case. So that's not always the case. Your symptoms don't always indicate what you're gonna have. Then once I got into my second trimester, I was still kind of in my first trimester when I started having the ligament pain. Like I said, I wasn't even really showing. The baby wasn't even like heavy enough. I remember going to the doctor and telling him like, what's up, like she's not even heavy enough, like why am I already feeling like pressure and like pain. And I remember him telling me that just because your body, like I had them so close together that my body started the process before I actually like needed the ligaments to start opening up. It's like muscle memory. So that's why I was getting them a lot earlier than the first time around. Even like I remember we went camping in June. I was only like 6 months pregnant or so at the time, and oh my gosh, like it was the worst. Like I couldn't walk around, I couldn't really like do anything. With ligament pain, you just want to take some pain relievers. Also for the inflammation, it helps the inflammation. I don't really like taking a lot of pain relievers. I just try to ride it out and take it easy. That's the only way also that you can kind of relieve it, is just taking it easy and not straining yourself. So yeah, I know that's what everyone wants to hear when they're in pain, is like, well, can't really do much about it. So yeah, that's the run through of kind of like when I got pregnant, how my pregnancy was in a nutshell, and then when I actually gave birth. So I remember that day that I went into labor, we went to go eat pizza. Oh no, we had gone to Buffalo Wild Wings, I think. Anyways, we went to go eat somewhere. So anyways, I also experienced the same thing with Charlotte as I did with Jet. I was getting like Braxton Hicks and contractions, but they weren't exactly the times apart every time, or like closer and closer together. Like sometimes I would get them like every 10 minutes for like 45 minutes, and then I would stop getting them, and then I would get them like every 15 minutes for like 45 minutes, and then I would get them for like every 2 minutes for like 10 minutes. So I was just, they were very sporadic, but they just kept coming. So this time around it was a little different because we had Jet with us. It was about 10 o'clock, and I called my mom and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna need you guys to come over, stay with Jet. We want to go to the hospital. Now talking back with my mom about that night, she's like, I did not think that you were gonna have the baby. I was exactly 38 weeks because I had her the next day, and I had her at 38 weeks and 1 day. She was basically 2 weeks early. So my mom basically didn't think that I was gonna have her, and it was a Sunday, and like she had to go to work the next day. So I remember I called her. She came over with my sister and my cousin, and they came and stayed with Jet. Rams and I went to the hospital, and they put me on the monitors. I wasn't, you know, having like crazy contractions or anything at this point. They checked me and I was at 3 centimeters. So the nurse was like, okay, well go ahead and take an hour, go walk around the hospital, and then come back and we'll check you again. I'm like, okay. So there we went, me and Ramses just walking around, didn't really do anything special, just kind of kept walking the entire time. And then we came back and she's like, okay, well, you're 3.5 centimeters, so if you come back and you only progress another 0.5 centimeter, then I'm gonna have to send you home. That's like the last thing you want to hear, especially because our hospital is 30 minutes away from where we live, so I did not want to go home. So yeah, at this point it was almost midnight. So then we go back around, start walking. This time I start going up and down the stairs, and then every time I would get a contraction, I would like hunch over and kind of like just do like a squat and kind of like push a little bit. I did that for about 30-40 minutes, and then by the time it was about 45 minutes that I had been walking, hunching over, pushing, going up and down the stairs, I felt a leak down my leg. It did not like gush out or drip out or anything, but it definitely leaked down my leg. And I literally was like, yes, my water broke. Because before we started that walk, I was like, I'm gonna make my water break. We're not going home. So we go back, and she swabs the fluid because they want to make sure it's amniotic fluid and not pee. So they swabbed it, they go to test it, and this entire time when we're waiting for her to come back with the results, I am dying. So if you guys watched my first birth story video, it wasn't until the rest of my water broke that I started getting real contractions. But with my second pregnancy, it just leaked, and right after that I was getting them heavy, and then I wasn't getting a break. I was getting them right on top of each other. We were in triage still. I was like holding onto the rail, and I would just look up at the clock and just like try to breathe, and I was just like in so much pain. And what was so bad about those contractions was that I didn't get a break, and that's what I was getting very frustrated and very like like anxious, I guess, and then nobody was in there. It was just me and Ramses. So I remember I was just trying to concentrate, trying to stay calm, and I kept yelling at Ramses. I'm like, so this time around, I knew I wanted to get the epidural because I knew what I was getting myself into. So the first time around, I was open to, you know, writing it out, not, you know, getting it right away, whatever. But at this point, I knew I wanted to get it. So I was like, literally any little breath that I could take, I was telling her, I was like, where's the nurse? I was like, I'm gonna have the baby right here. Like, I feel it. Like, the contractions are so consistent and so bad, and I'm gonna need the epidural. Like, I can't, like, you know, I was like, where's the nurse? Can you get her? And I remember Ramses just looking out of like the curtain and just like, you know, telling me like, okay, yeah, I'm looking for her, like she's coming, whatever. So at this point, I kind of like don't know what happened. Kind of like, I'm assuming she came back and they were like, yeah, it's amniotic fluid. I think they just pushed me from the triage bed to the room. And I remember that whole time I was just like going through the hallways, and any little like bumps, I was like, oh my god, like just trying to concentrate and like breathe and whatever. So we get to the room, and like the whole time, even the people that are pushing my car, even the people that are pushing my bed, I'm like, please, I need it, like, can you get the anesthesiologist? I need my epidural, like, as soon as I get in the room. And like the nurses are so sweet, and they're like, yeah, you know, they're gonna come, you know, whatever. So we like get in to the room. I get into the bed, and like literally like, I don't know, like 10 minutes later, the anesthesiologist comes in, and I, you know, you have to like hold a pillow, hunch over. That was the hardest thing, just because I was getting contractions, and I just remember like struggling just to sit up, just to stay still, because you have to stay still. So I'm editing this, and I realized that I forgot to mention a very important part. So the rest of my water broke as soon as I sat up in the bed to get the epidural. It felt like just a huge water balloon. Like I just sat on top of a huge water balloon, and it just busted from under me. They are so prepared. They just like cleaned it up, kept it moving. It was like no issue at all. I got my epidural and I was done. And yeah, so continue with the story. But that's when the rest of my water broke. So keep in mind, this whole time when I was dying from my bag just leaking, not my whole water breaking. So okay. And it was just so bad, and then finally he like gets it in, whatever. So then they flatten your bed when you get that epidural at first, because they want you to lay flat. So the nurse was like, okay, I'm gonna help you lay down so the epidural can evenly, like, you know, go down your body. So I was like, okay. So she grabs my hand, and I start like leaning back, and you know, like that pressure that you put on your abs, you know, your stomach, to like help you lean back. As soon as like I start going backwards, and keep in mind, this entire time she hasn't checked my dilation since the first time I came back from that first walk. So since that first walk that I had dilated to 3.5, she didn't check me the second time when my water broke. She only swabbed like my leg and left, and that was it. So she had not checked me this entire time. So I start telling her when she's helping me go back, I'm like, I feel her, like she's coming. And at this point, like the epidural like barely got in my back. Like it's not even, you know, going, it's barely going. So I'm like telling her, I'm like, I feel her, like she's right there, like I have to push. You just have this like feeling that you just have to push. Like you cannot help it, like you can't help it. So I was like, I have to push, like she's coming, I have to push. So she helps me like lay down the rest of the way. She goes around, like checks me, and then she just looks up at me and she says, okay, you're gonna have to do this, like she's right there, you're gonna have to do this without the epidural, like she's right there, like she, you know, she's coming. So at this point I pushed twice and she just comes out. I pushed 2 times and she flew out. I don't know if someone caught her or she landed on the bed or what, but she just came out. It was just a nurse and Ramses, like technically 2 nurses, but a nurse and Ramses, and yeah, and she was born. No doctor, nothing. Yeah, she was born at 3:22 in the morning. So total, like from when my water broke, or let's just say from when we got to the hospital at about 10:30 or so, 11, and she was born at 3:22 in the morning. So it was super fast compared to my first childbirth experience. I honestly preferred that I didn't get the epidural, like I didn't have it. You know, they obviously like took it out and everything like right after I had her and all that. The only thing was that I did have like a minor tear, so when they stitched me up, they did have to like inject some lidocaine or some sort of numbing injection around the area that they were going to stitch up. That was like the only thing that was like, oh, that kind of sucked, because you just feel everything that they do down there when you don't have the, besides the childbirth, but you know, the afterbirth, like when the placenta comes out and everything, when they massage your fundus, and like that kind of sucked. But as far as like the recovery, it was nice being able to like get up, stand up. I didn't have like an IV that whole entire time, so I didn't experience swelling in my legs and my feet like I did the first time around. I forgot to mention that actually in the first video about Jet Marie when she was born, but I did have like for almost 2 weeks, like I had a lot, like my feet were very, very swollen, and that's because of all the fluid that I had consistently for like 12 hours while I was in the hospital. That was a good thing. The second time around, I didn't have like any fluid, so I didn't have swelling. She latched on perfectly. Like I didn't need a nipple guard like I did the first time around. It was not hard at all. My nipples were totally ready to breastfeed again. I didn't have the 2-week period of just excruciating pain like the first time around. Again, she didn't really take bottles or anything. Like I did give them both pacifiers and stuff, but they didn't really take a bottle. And Charlotte was just the quietest like little angel baby ever. I don't think Jet knew she existed for the first couple of months, because she just slept and ate and peed her diaper and slept and ate. She was just so quiet, so happy. She was a really good baby. And then the first meal that I had after I gave birth to Charlotte was, Rems brought me Panera. I had like this sandwich that I get from there, I can't remember, and the mac and cheese from Panera and some cookies. So that was pretty bomb. And I don't know why I remember the first meal after I give birth, but I do. Very important. Charlotte was about 7 pounds 7 ounces or 7 pounds 6 ounces. She was just a few ounces smaller than Jet was, but they were very similar in size, just because I did have her a week earlier than I had Jet, because I had Jet at 39 weeks, so I had her at 38 weeks. So if I would have had her at the same time as Jet, she probably would have been the exact same weight. Also, Charlotte was a really big baby. Not when she was born, but she got so big so fast. By the time she was 6 months, she was in 12-month clothes. And she was just so cute and so fat and chubby. Jet was also a fat and chubby baby, but like not like Charlotte. Like Jet was always like her size in clothes, and Charlotte like just grew really fast till 6 months. So once she reached 6 months and she was like at 12-month clothes, she stayed at 12-month clothes until she was like a year and a half or something. Like she just got taller, but like her body kind of stayed the same. I don't know why. They were both breastfed, so I don't know why she was just like fatter than Jet was. Also, I just want to say, don't get too caught up with everybody's stories and how things happen for certain people and don't happen for other people, and just listen to your body. Trust yourself. You know your body, you know your baby, so don't let other people say, oh well, these symptoms mean this, and oh, when you're pregnant and this happens it means this, and oh, if you're in labor and this happens, do this. Like, everyone is different. Make your own decisions and make them to where you feel good about them, not because you're trying to please somebody or because you think your situation is going to be the same as somebody else's. So as you can see, I had them very close together, 2 girls, and I had different things happen for both pregnancies, both childbirths. So yeah, don't get too wrapped up in that. Just do what's best for you and your baby. And yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.